This week on Christian World News, ISIS strikes a Coptic church in Cairo. As families cope with the grief, how will Egypt protect the tiny Christian community there?
This is one of the greatest crises of our generation, and how we respond to it might just define our future as the church.
See how this church in Washington, D.C. is reaching out to a Syrian refugee family. And meet the governor of Jakarta, Indonesia. Find out why this Christian leader is on trial in the world's largest Muslim nation.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 크리스천 월드뉴스입니다. 얼마 전 이집트 카이로의 한 교회에서 폭탄 테러가 발생했죠. 이슬람 극단주의 무장단체 IS는 이를 자신들의 소행이라고 밝혔는데요. 주일 아침에 발생한 이 테러 공격으로 최소 25명이 사망한 바 있습니다. 이에 LCC 이집트 대통령은 국가 애도 기간을 선포하고 장례식에 참석해 유가족들을 위로했습니다. 하지만 콥트 교회 공동체는 추가 공격도 우려하고 있는 상황입니다. 오늘의 첫 소식입니다.
Coptic Orthodox Pope Tewodros led the service for victims of the bombing that tore through St. Peter's Church. The church sits right next to St. Mark's Cathedral, which is the seat of Egypt's Coptic Orthodox Church. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi attended the service alongside the victims' families. He said 3 men and 1 woman have been arrested in connection to the bombing.
My consolation today is for all Egyptians, and not just for Christians, because this ordeal is all of ours.
The attack took place on a national holiday in Egypt, celebrating a Muslim holiday. It comes after a series of attacks by radical Muslims against the church in Egypt. The explosion ripped through St. Peter's, located next to the main Coptic cathedral.
Pieces of flesh were on the walls and ground.
Inside the church, the dead and injured people were everywhere, and the fire and chaos was all around.
Most of the dead were women and children at a Sunday service. One eyewitness said, "They were children. What have they done to deserve this? I wish I had died with them instead of seeing these scenes." The Coptic Orthodox Church released a statement on its Facebook page saying, in part, "As we are bereaved by this violence and terrorism that attacks worshipers, we pray for these martyrs and for the wounded." The Egyptian church stresses on persevering national unity that keeps all Egyptians on Egypt's blessed land. After the attack, demonstrators gathered. They protested against terrorism and demanded national unity. Coptic Christians make up about 10% of Egyptians, and the bombing demonstrated the danger they face. For example, in 2013, CBN News reported that the Muslim Brotherhood burned a number of churches, Christian businesses, and even an orphanage. President el-Sisi said a religious war is being waged and vowed to hunt down the attackers. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
이와 관련해 CBN 정치부 수석 특파원 게리 레인과 함께 좀 더 자세한 이야기 나눠보겠습니다.
Gary, you've actually been to that very church that was bombed.
St. Mark's Cathedral is right next to it. It's part of that compound. And St. Mark's has been there, the cathedral that houses the Pope Tewodros, who's the head of the Coptic Church.
Now, ISIS claim responsibility, but the Egyptian government is saying it's the Muslim Brotherhood. Who did this?
Well, and then the governor of Alexandria, he said that it was al-Qaeda. So who's on first
Maybe
here?
it's all three.
You know, over the years, we here in the U.S. have been quick to say, oh, that act of terrorism was al-Qaeda, now it's ISIS and so forth. But in Egypt, it's very complex. All 3 of these groups have reason to attack the government, also to attack the Christians there. And just several days before this attack on the church, there was an attack against several police officers.
It seems like ISIS is just quick to take responsibility for anything, any atrocity.
Well, of course, and the Egyptian government is fighting them in the Sinai Peninsula. They've really attacked them and come down against them, cracked down hard on them. And also, of course, the Muslim Brotherhood, going back 3.5 years to when el-Sisi kicked them out of power.
Of course, this is not the first time that we've seen church bombings. Why are churches being attacked?
Because they're Christian, and they're only about 10 or 15% of the population, in a total population of about 90 million people who are mostly Muslim. and many of the militants see them as being friendly to El-Sisi. They were one of the first to endorse El-Sisi when he first took over power.
Well, you've been there many times. You've met with the Coptic Christians there, the Egyptian Christians. How did they cope with this? Do they feel, I mean, they got to feel completely vulnerable.
Well, the first thing is shock.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, no, not again. And then there's grief. And I think many of the Christians there really look at it, Wendy, as saying, isn't there something the government can do to protect us? Right. But the leadership says, look, there's nothing government can do. It doesn't matter who is in government, who's in power. Ultimately, we have to look to God. And the only hope for Egypt in the future is to become a Christian nation, to embrace what the Copts have embraced for 2,000 years.
And they've got a long way to go before
yes,
that
and that's
happens.
the only way it will change.
이라크 북부에서는 정부군과 IS의 격전이 여전히 계속되고 있습니다. 모술에서 적군을 몰아내기 위한 탈환 작전이 계속되고 있는데요. 최근 새로운 움직임이 포착됐다고 합니다. 이라크 북부로 가보시죠.
Already thousands of refugees have tried to escape the ISIS rampage across Iraq. It's a trickle that could become a flood. Behind me is one of the many refugee camps throughout northern Iraq. 20,000 people live in this one alone, with another 30,000 in the vicinity. But experts warn when the city of Mosul falls, it could represent the greatest refugee crisis in decades.
There's a lot of potential for this to be catastrophic on the human scale.
Matthew Nowry leads Samaritan's Purse in northern Iraq. He says the internally displaced persons, or IDPs, coming out of Mosul today are different from the refugees who fled ISIS in the summer of 2014.
The IDPs that are going to be coming out of Mosul have lived 2+ years under the control of ISIS. And so they've seen what I believe is the worst terrorism the world has ever seen. And they have been influenced by ISIS.
He says that makes this humanitarian effort far more dangerous.
When you talk about 1 million+ people being displaced all over the desert here in Iraq, it doesn't take long for you to understand that there will be ISIS cells in those groups of people, in those groupings, which brings in a whole new set of challenges.
Despite the danger, he sees the crisis as an opportunity for the church, especially with the young people.
These youth have been watching ISIS for the last 2 years. And they know what they're being taught by ISIS. And they're about to be displaced into the region, and they're going to be watching to see who receives them and who serves them. And so we have taken it upon ourselves as an organization, and we believe that Jesus commands us to give a glass of cold water to our enemy and to serve. And so we want to be there. We want to be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ when these children and when these adults, whether it is cells of ISIS or not.
Nowry says what's needed most now is prayer.
The situation is incredibly complex. And I'd ask the church back in America, in the West, first and foremost to pray. We don't have all of the answers. We don't know how to remain completely secure. This is a dangerous calling. But I'd ask for prayers for the people themselves that are going to be displaced, that God would soften their hearts now, that they'd be receptive to the message that so many of Jesus' followers are going to be out in the desert here in Iraq trying to provide.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Northern Iraq.
미국에서는 중동 난민 수용 문제로 골머리를 앓고 있습니다. 이 문제를 두고 정치인들 간의 공방도 치열한데요. 이러한 혼란 속에 난민들에게 먼저 다가간 것은 바로 교회였습니다. 워싱턴 소재의 한 교회 이야기 지금 바로 만나보시죠.
This may look like a regular prayer meeting, but those being prayed over might surprise you. A Muslim family recently resettled from Syria, who left their country when ISIS invaded their hometown and gunned down many of their neighbors. The family buried their 16-year-old son alive for hours during the raid to protect him from being forcibly recruited to the terrorist organization. Members from National Community Church have gathered to listen to the family's story and learn more about why they fled to the United States.
Have you ever met any Syrian refugees before?
No. I don't think so. Media gives a lot of, these are bad people, watch out for them, all sorts of danger. And just know that it's not true.
Pastor Dave Schmidgall and his wife Kate met the family shortly after they arrived in the U.S. They spoke no English and were placed in the expensive city of Washington, D.C. The resettlement agency covered expenses for only 3 months. The father, Bashir, once an electrician, now feels helpless.
In Syria, he was very strong. He was a provider. He had a sure skill set and a profession. Here, he feels lost. He's working really hard to learn English, but the pressure to get financial security is pretty strong.
Kate and Dave realized 2 major things missing in Bashir's family's resettlement process: friendships and income. They opened up their home to host this event, which solved both those issues and gave the church an opportunity to put a face to the crisis.
What's missing is friendship, it's relationship, it's a meal.
Those attending not only met the family, they learned to make a Syrian dish called labne, a type of cheese. Each person also gave money toward the family's rent.
It was so simple, like we're just making cheese and they're just sharing their stories and we're just praying for them, and just to see like God's hands and feet in action here tonight was really cool.
But what you see happening here is easier said than done.
Across the nation, 73%, just the general population, it avoids or is uncomfortable with conversations with Muslims. It takes a little bit of risk to cut past the rhetoric and the opinions to get involved in areas that are controversial, but there are people behind these topics and these issues.
Lead pastor Mark Batterson found that out after his wife returned from a refugee missions trip.
Her heart started to break for what I believe breaks the heart of God. And when your wife has a heart for something as her husband, you get a heart for it.
Pastor Batterson believes if churches move past the politics, they could change the course of this crisis.
Sometimes we confuse political issues with biblical issues. My hope and prayer would be that the church would recognize this is one of the greatest crises of our generation, and how we respond to it might just define our future as the church.
NCC plans to host more Listen and Learn events with different refugee families in the future. As for Bashir, he started a handyman service with the help of Kate in hopes of one day becoming self-sufficient in America. Reporting from Washington, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
세계 최대 규모의 무슬림 국가 인도네시아에서 신성모독 혐의로 법정에 선 한 고위직 인사가 있다고 합니다. 바수키 푸르나마 주지사의 이야기인데요. 기독교인들과 무슬림들의 갈등이 고조되고 있다고 합니다. 인도네시아 소식입니다.
On Tuesday, Jakarta Governor Basuki Purnama, also known as Ahok, was brought to the state court for the first day of his trial. He is accused of committing blasphemy against Islam because of statements he made several months ago. If he's found guilty, the Christian governor could face up to 5 years in prison. Ahok is the first ethnic Chinese governor of Jakarta and the first non-Muslim to serve in the office for more than half a century. He's running for re-election next year. Ahok suggested politicians misinterpret the Quran when they state that Muslims should not be governed by non-Muslims. The state prosecutor told the court that Ahok insulted Islam and desecrated the Quran by using one of its verses to mislead voters in order to increase his chances of winning. His trials was filled with a heavy police presence, and disruptive traffic restrictions were in place around the courthouse. Hundreds of protesters rallied outside the court to demand that Ahok be jailed. Despite the chaos, Ahok insisted he never intended to offend any religious individual or groups when he made the comments last September.
I never intended to insult Muslims or insult the clergy. On that basis, I plead with the judges to consider my exception plea.
Ahok's supporters also show up outside the courthouse to defend the Christian leader's innocence. They believe radical Muslims in Jakarta are trying to harm Ahok's re-election chances.
He never wants to insult any other religion. He wouldn't tolerate any action against his country and his people.
Some fear Ahok's trial signals a rapid growing Islam militancy in the country of 250 million. Christian represents less than 10% of the Indonesian's population. According to the Indonesia's constitution, freedom of religion is well protected nationwide. However, militant Muslim groups often take violent and legal action against the Christians and churches. Ahok's lawyer asked the 5-judge panel to throw the case out. The judges adjourned the trial until December 20th. Mengfei Li, CBN News.
구소련에 살던 유대인들이 가난으로 고통을 겪고 있습니다. 대부분은 집이 없거나 무관심 또는 학대 속에 고통을 받는 아이들인데요. 1990년대부터 활동을 시작한 국제기독교 구제사역팀이 이들을 돕고 있다고 합니다. 이 사역팀의 돈 호로위츠 전무이사를 만나 자세한 상황 들어보겠습니다.
He's the executive director of Christians Care International. Don, thanks so much for joining us today.
I'd like to thank you for having me here. And
give us some background on the plight of Jews in the former Soviet Union and how your ministry is helping them.
Jewish people are really suffering right now. Elderly Jewish people, Holocaust survivors, are starving to death every day. I can't tell you how devastating it is to walk into these people's homes, see the conditions that they're living in, see the suffering, the emptiness in their eyes. They really do need our help. There's no social services. There's absolutely no infrastructure in these countries to help these people. They desperately need our help.
And what is the help, Don, that you all are able to provide for them?
We just opened our new senior services care program in Bielitz, Cerkva, Ukraine. In the center, we offer daily meals, we offer health screening, exercise therapy, brain-stimulating activities, and advanced psychological care to take care of our elderly people there.
I understand you also help them move to Israel. Is that right?
We do. Our Aliyah programs have helped over 87,000 Jews immigrate to Israel. We offer vocational training in Israel so new immigrants can have the chance to get a great job as they adapt to their new life in Israel, and they could contribute to Israeli society. Our children's rehabilitation programs are cutting edge, combining neuroscience with advanced psychotherapy to care for the over 1,700 Jewish orphans and underprivileged Jewish children under our care who've been severely abused, neglected, and abandoned.
You're opening a U.S. office now for the first time. Why expand your operations here to America?
The Christians in America have such a great love for Israel and the Jewish people. We're excited to be able to share our message at Christians Care International, our mission with the Christians in the United States. There's such an importance right now to stand by Israel and the Jewish people.
You've launched a new website, and it's called christianscare.org. How will that help your mission?
The new website does a phenomenal job of allowing people to really come inside our mission, to meet the people in our programs, to see really what we're doing, and they can learn how to get involved on the website.
Why should Christians help the Jewish people?
You know, Israel is not only the hope for the Jewish people, Israel is the hope for the entire world. Jews and Christians have a shared destiny in fulfilling biblical prophecy. And now is the time for Christians to wrap our loving arms around our Jewish brothers and sisters and stand up and answer God's calling to bless the Jewish people. Not only that, but we have a phenomenal opportunity right now to begin to repair the centuries of damage that's happened between our two faiths. And we as Christians can stand up with our Jewish brothers and sisters, let them know we're there, let them know that we're by their side.
Well, Don Horowitz, Executive Director of Christians Care International, thanks so much for joining us today.
God bless and thank you for having me.
God bless you.
슈퍼북이 일본에서도 큰 영향력을 끼치고 있습니다. 일본 학부모들과 아이들에게 큰 호응을 얻고 있는 건데요. 오늘의 마지막 소식은 일본으로 가보시죠.
In Japan, Superbook festivals were held in the region of Kyushu, the area that was hit by a 7.3 magnitude earthquake in April. Kyushu Christ Disaster Relief Center head, Pastor Yogi Nakamura says Superbook is part of the trauma counseling for the children.
We wanted to bring hope to the children who are still recovering from trauma brought about by the earthquake. Many children here are still afraid. They can't sleep by themselves, so Superbook is a big encouragement to the kids.
Superbook has also stirred the churches towards strengthening their children's ministries. Many churches don't even have Sunday school. Jenny O is a missionary among the children. She was delighted with Superbook's The First Christmas episode, which was shown in the festival.
I think it gives them a very different perspective on Christmas. They don't know about Jesus. They don't know what the Christ part of Christmas is. So I think it really helps them to tell them what the true meaning of Christmas is in a way that they can understand.
These girls say they enjoyed watching Superbook, and they like the story about Jesus Christ.
Superbook can be an effective way of sharing the gospel in Japan. The children who watch it, when they grow up, even if they don't become Christian, they can look back to the values they have learned.
Lucille Talusan, CBN News.
오늘 준비한 소식은 여기까지입니다. 저는 다음 주에 다시 찾아오겠습니다. 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.